So it's a great little segue to talk now about why we wanted to capture all of that feedback and how we're then going to look to incorporate a lot of that into the future and into the roadmap. So I get the privilege of being able to talk about what's coming and what's coming next. And it's a long list. So we are really, really excited about the future. We're really excited about the new projects that we're working on, but we're also continually driven by you. So we want to make sure that not just within the land sphere, but anything that you're working on that is a challenge or a problem that takes you time, that doesn't have a good system behind it, we're looking to solve those challenges and those problems. So I also just want to kind of take a quick step back and say a huge thank you to Izzy, to Sean, and to John for the amount of hard work that's gone into coordinating this session today. As you know, this is our very first user conference, so we're really, really blessed to have so many people here today, but it wouldn't have happened without Izzy and without Sean and without John's really tireless work. So I just wanted to really call out and thank them for their help. Yeah. And it gives me a chance to have a sip of water. Cool. So what's coming next? The biggest thing that we want to talk about that's coming next, and you can jump to this next slide, is what we're calling PX4 reimagined. So PX4 is now 8 years old. We realize as a software provider that's not super old, but for us, we want to constantly be thinking about the future, and we do not want to get to 10, 15, 20 years and be carrying all this legacy tech debt or technology debt that slows the system down, that makes it hard to use, that gets rid of some of that intuitiveness that's driving the system. So we have made I think, the biggest decision we've ever made as a company to reimagine and rebuild the entire PX4 system. So we are rebuilding a brand new system all on AWS. So we're moving cloud providers to go to AWS. And what this is going to mean is that we're going to have a brand new, serverless and completely scalable architecture that is really customizable by individual users. So some things that we're going to talk about on that front are things like being able to toggle your own labels within the database. If you want to change authorities to claims, you will be able to. There's lots and lots of components that come to this, but it was a really, really hard decision. What it's going to mean at the end of the day is that all of the development that happens in the future will be completely controlled by us. So as many of you know, we have an external development team. We will still be using them for tasks moving forward, but the primary driver of all of our development and the manager of quality and outcomes and timings will all be internal to PX4. So we're really, really excited about this. In terms of what it's going to mean for our users, the system will continue to operate as is. We'll continue to support that solution through this migration process. We have a really, really aggressive timeline to do this. So this brand new system it will look and feel exactly the same as the PX4 system, but it'll just have so much more capability within it that we're really excited about, which I'll break down now. But it's going to be fully rolled out, implemented, and all clients migrated before the end of the year. So it's a really aggressive roadmap. It's very, very exciting to talk about what's coming with this. But with this AWS partnership comes some other things as well. So something we now have access to is if you have any additional challenges that you want to solve that you don't currently have a tool for, we've got access to really significant funding through AWS to develop it for you, particularly things that are driven by agentic AI. So some of the things that have just been mentioned, statutory reporting tools. So if you've got some historic statutory reports or annual reports that you've created, a database in PX4 that houses all the data about what you've done in the last year and a template for what you want that report to look like, that is a really great use case for agentic AI to build you a draft report output at the end of your term year, at the end for your annual reporting. So that's a really good example of an agentic AI driven solution that we're working on that will be really, really powerful and very customizable in how it works. But we throw it to you, not necessarily just for today, but if you have any other challenges that you're looking to solve where you see the incorporation of some agentic AI being useful, we've got a pool of really significant funding that we can deliver this very quickly and very powerfully through AWS.
And just to add on that, it doesn't need to be land specific.
Nope. It can be anything. And it doesn't need to be in the PX4 system. It can be adjacent to or separate to. So again, just wanted to make that clear. But again, just to kind of talk about the PX4 reimagined, this was a really hard decision for us. We want to make sure that the current system remains working as it has for all of our existing clients. But as we've started to talk about, when you start to talk about 10, 20, 30,000 authorities in the system, the volumes of data we're starting to talk to are starting to cause some speed issues in the database. So, and we own that. So what we're going to get out of this is what we're calling a serverless and scalable architecture. So what that means is that if you're operating and you've got a team operating in Zambia and a team in Chile and a team in Ontario, each of those teams will have a server that automatically spins up for their use. So the teams operating around the world, wherever you are, if you're operating out of Nevada, if you're operating out of Utah, wherever it is, as soon as you log into the system, like the use of the database will drive the number of servers that the system uses. So it'll be completely scalable and serverless, which is how all of the new systems in this modern world are built. So there's a lot coming on that front that we'll talk to here, but we're really, really excited about what that means, and obviously eliminating all of that tech debt and being able to now incorporate a lot of this feedback that you've just given us into that new solution is why we were so eager to get that feedback, because it's essentially a clean slate to start to think about, if you could do this from scratch, what are some tools you'd love to see? What are some things that haven't worked that we can tweak? For my mind, the way that the workflows operate, where you get asked that question and then the system loads the next question, we're looking to have that as a one-page window. So as soon as you select an answer, it'll automatically drop down the next question in the list and just make the whole process a lot more efficient and a lot more effective. So there's a lot happening there, and happy to dive into more detail with anyone around that. But the first pilots and migration for that will be kicking off from August and September this year. So then we'll be fully migrating all of your private servers and the multi-tenanted environment before the end of the year is out. So we're really excited about that. In terms of some other AI-powered tools, obviously AI is in many parts of our lives now. It's hard to ignore. Trivia questions, trip plans. So there's lots of ways we're trying to incorporate AI. It doesn't make sense everywhere in systems like this. And again, we've tried to put our heads towards what makes sense. But if you have other ideas or other things that you see as valuable, then we'd love to hear it from you as well about what are things that take you a lot of time, or what are tasks that you're regularly doing that there's opportunity to automate. But some things that we're looking at here, I've mentioned already that intelligent document and obligation extraction tool. So that's now live. That's been validated. The proof of concept's finished. So that is all about scanning, or once you've got an agreement or a permit, the system can scan it, identify all the details and all the obligations within that permit or that agreement. It'll then give you a table of all of those conditions and actions and the suggested due dates based on the agreement or the permit. You validate it and say, yes, that is all correct. And then the system populates with all of that data.
That's which one?
Sorry?
Which one is that?
That's the intelligent document extraction there, the first top left. But it's across both your permits or your authorities and also your agreements. So we're really, really excited that, and Steph, who many of you will know, she's been working on that with Paul really, really hard the last couple of months. So that's great.
So tell me, how does that work if you have someone's set of paper in their hand? They just need to scan it on a Xerox or something?
Yeah. Again, there was a similar question asked. So it needs to be a PDF or a scanned document to be able to run this process over. And we've still found, particularly with like legislation out of Africa, sometimes the PDF is not great in terms of quality. And I'm sure that you'll have lots of examples of some older agreements and things where the data is, or the scanned version is not of a super high quality. There will always be limitations if the quality of the data you're looking at is really hard to read from a computer perspective. That's why we always make sure that there's that human validation element that needs to you need to double check. Because again, we've seen examples where if the page is slightly skewed or a letter or a number gets slightly cut off, that the dates can get pulled through incorrectly. So there's just little things like that will continue to get better over time, but we always want to include that human validation to make sure that, especially around compliance, that there's that sign off of that data.
I'll really stamp right on top of the information.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, it's gotten very good though. I mean, you could take a picture of these stickies on the wall, and AI can interpret it today.
I mean, I dare an AI algorithm to translate my handwriting.
Yeah.
I don't know if it would be able to.
Between your guys' handwriting and Toby's handwriting.
Yeah. My left hand was actually better than my right hand, which was surprising. We're just about to release the PX4 chatbot. So again, within our knowledge base, we've got all of the customer-facing process maps that have all the workflows and all of the steps. We've got our user guides. We've got all the legislation in a knowledge base behind the scenes. The PX4 chatbot, you can query that and ask questions about the legislation, about a particular step in the process that you're at. Any of those types of questions, why do I have, what act does this grant it under? Why, what section of the act tells me about this? And the system will provide you with the reference and the detail as where that data's come from. So we've all been testing it the last couple of months, and we're just about to release that chatbot. So it'll just be a little blue square in the middle of your PX4 dashboard. You can click it from anywhere in the system and open the chat up. So that's really cool. And again, as the knowledge base continues to grow, as will the capability of the chatbot.
I mean, where's my question on that? Because this is like 10 years ago, so I'm trying to remember correctly. I think in geothermal lease that the payments changed every so often by the regulations, and finding the right regulation was a pain. That might work there.
Yeah, so when our team of subject matter experts are always looking for updates in legislation and changes or new acts that come out. So as soon as a new act is brought out, it's included in the knowledge base. And if an old act becomes irrelevant, it'd be excluded from the knowledge base. So
Payment did it change? Would it be able to automatically update the payment was existing in the system, or would it show me where to go to see the regulation and then I would manually have to update it myself?
more the second part of that at the moment. So yeah, the chatbot can't access your database and override information in your system. If the payment is a statutory payment that changes over time based on age or percentage ownership and things like that, a lot of those are formulated in the back end of the system. So if there is a formula that can drive in, the Alaskan claim filings or the Alaskan expenditure component is a really good example of that we're still capturing a lot of those nuances. But yeah, so the tool wouldn't update your payments automatically, but if a payment had changed, you could query and say, show me the act or the section of the act that talks about this change. And that'd pull that up in the window internally.
That's the goal. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, especially we were talking about this, Sean, like the Alaska, because it depends if you've got 40 acres or 160. Is it year one? Is it 2 through 5, 6 through 10? Like if it can do that and do it correct, I had a lot of colleagues in Manfolio where I would be thinking, okay, the payment's going up this year, and I look in there and it wasn't, and there was something in the workflow that was not by grade.
Yeah.
So you couldn't really rely on it. It was a very manual process for me.
Yeah. So that's what Sean mentioned. That's in train. That's what we're currently working on with Alaska, but we want that to be across all of the system as well. I saw a hand up the back there.
I was just curious if you have a download mechanism on your chatbot or some way to access your chatbot history or log.
That's a great.
Yeah, we do have a log, but the downloadable feature is a really good idea, which is not currently in there. So again, it is early days. So yeah, you can access and see all of the questions you've asked and kind of create a new chat. But at the moment, that's not downloadable, but that makes sense to have it as a downloadable tool. Would you want that to download into a PDF or Word so you can cut and paste or?
Yeah, probably Word.
Yeah.
Some busy, obscure situation or a strict question or whatever. And a tool like the chatbot would be, I guess, up one paper first stop is for information for the peer, citing references for various chatbot. And I have typed that email to get and or whatever. It would be nice to be able to download that into something that I can.
Yeah, that's a really great point. Great feedback. We are looking at, many of you know that we have that stakeholder communication module within the system that tracks all of your conversations and meetings and things like that. We're looking to incorporate just a little summary, an AI-driven summary at the top of your stakeholders. So, this is a really high high touch point stakeholder, we recommend a reach out next week, or this stakeholder hasn't been contacted for 6 months, maybe consider reaching out to touch base, some things like that from at the top of your communication log. So that's quite cool. I have mentioned the onboarding assistance that John's been working on. So again, taking a lot of your data in whatever format it's coming in, migrating it automatically into the PX4 templates for onboarding, and then using that to onboard into the system. Again, alleviating a lot of those concerns around historic data and legacy data and what we need to be doing to help companies migrate either from other systems or just from current practices. And that will just continue to get better as well. And we've mentioned the draft reporting. So lots of new little tools that we're working on, some more progressed than others. But again, if there's other things you'd like to see from like an AI tool standpoint, we would love to hear it and then love to continue to incorporate more tools into the database. I mentioned metrics. So this is live. Unfortunately, it's taken a bit longer than expected to get the AI metrics builder into the PX4 system. But this is a screenshot I took a few days ago of a query that I wrote, show me my projects by jurisdiction. And the system then just generated this bar chart. But you can see from this, you can filter further using the filtering tool. So if you then wanted to narrow down to just one jurisdiction within that list or other filters, and then you could also flick to a pie chart view or a tabulated view. I've asked for 50 other styles of report to be included in this as well, which is I think why it's taken a little bit longer to release. I want scatter plots and line plots and all these different ways to showcase this data. But that's then downloadable into a little image file. And you can also save that query onto your desktop. So it's a query that runs every time you load the metrics page. So if there are particular things you're regularly needing to look at, so show me how many hectares I have or acres I have in Michigan, you can save that metric as its own dashboard, its own metric on your dashboard. So that's really, really cool around metrics. And again, you can save a whole bunch of different queries. So when you log into that save page, all of those queries automatically run and give you all those graphics. So that's very, very cool.
Okay, thank you.
And a quick hand over to Sean to talk about another system we've recently been working on.
Yeah, so with the maturation of PX4 also comes the need for additional processes. As you all know, and we've touched on, as we've been onboarding more and more clients into PX4, we've been learning more and more about how to do that work and what's needed. I brought with me from my 10 years in UX, when I first came to PX4, deep understanding of design processes. And so even though PX4 already had a very strong design process based on Google Workshop, Kirsten and I together also enhanced that design process. We took into account the things that PX4 wanted to do, the direction that we were going, all of the feedback that we had heard. And we put together, can you move on to the next slide? So this is we put together a new design process, and this is what it essentially looks like. There's a lot beneath each one of these tiles. We're not going to go into all of that detail here, but I did want you to see what the design process looks like and explain a little bit about each of these steps. So the very first thing that happens anytime you bring a problem to our attention, just today you brought dozens of problems to our attention, we'll take each one of those, and what we'll do is we'll have further conversations, not just internally, but with you as well, about how to define those problems really. Try to get down to the root problems, what we call problem statements. Those problem statements will inform any solution that we then create. Whatever solution we create has to answer all of those problem statements. That's what discovery and problem definition is all about. What is the problem we're actually trying to solve, or set of problems? MVP, and then from there, once we are agreed, you and PX4 on.
It'll be you, Sean.
It'll be me. What the problems are, we will move into the next step, and everything has a sign-off point. It's not necessarily a documented sign-off point, but verbal sign-off point. It just depends on what we're working on. And then we get into MVP scope and definition. And essentially that's where we take those problems and we start to scope them out, and we try to understand what's the minimum viable solution that will solve this set of problems that we can get into the product today or as soon as possible. And we prioritize the remaining, and we separate it out into phases. And then those phases will be buckets of work that come later on down the road. Phase one will always be MVP. Then we move into rapid prototyping, user valid. That's where we actually get into Figma. We start to put together what's the solution actually going to look like inside PX4. And we share that with you, get your feedback on it. We iterate on that until we get into MVP design documentation. And this is what we would look at as a functional click-through high definition prototype, essentially in Figma. This is the closest you're going to get to what it's actually going to look like in the product before it's in the product itself. Last point of sign off. And then we get into build and deploy. Build and deploy opens up this, and what you can see down at the bottom, which is all of the steps that we go through anytime this work moves into development and gets built out. This is going to get enhanced quite greatly with these, with this move to AWS. We currently work on a month-long sprint cycle. As you've probably seen the release notes pop up when you log into PX4 on a monthly basis. That's because every month we release a set of enhancements or jurisdictional updates and bug fixes and whatnot. That's going to get compressed down into a much smaller time period, probably something like a week. I don't think we exactly have that defined yet, but all of these steps will happen in that period where the work will then get developed. It gets planned out, gets built. We go to internal testing, UAT, which is our user acceptance testing environment. Then it gets released to live production environment. And then we go through that entire circle, and then we come all the way back. And that's where we connect again to make sure that it's actually doing what we said it was going to do and what you need it to do. And then we'll have a sign-off point there. And if it doesn't meet your needs at that point, we just go back and we iterate until we all agree. And then we don't stop there. And this whole cycle actually repeats. It's not there, but if you drew an arrow from measure and learn all the way back to discovery and problem definition, this whole cycle repeats. So once we release something into production, we don't just stop. We then, our intent then at that point is to start measuring how's this actually working in PX4. Is it actually being used? And then we come all the way back to discovery problem definition. We'll have a new set of problems at that point that we'll use to inform the next iteration, the next phases of development for whatever that feature or functionality happens to be. Okay. Does that make sense? Anybody have any questions on that? Okay. So let's look at something concrete that we actually applied this design process to. So and we're going to look at what we're calling a permitting module or permitting solution, depending on who you're talking to, and project console redesign. These two we're putting together because they can't really be separated in PX4 anymore. These are the problem statements that we came out of. So when we started out conducting the research, I spoke with a number of you in this room and others who aren't about what the problems are related to permitting. What are the problems that we actually need to solve? And these are the problem statements that we came out of that research with. So we don't need to go into depth on any of these, but for those of you in the back who can't see, inadequate permit storage or tracking systems, manual tracking burden for permits right now. There's fragmented permit visibility across your organizations. There's a lot of communication workflow complexity, unclear permit dependencies, and unmanaged permit determination complexity. So if you want to know more about these, come see me. I'll show you the whole mirror board and we can go through it together. But we put together a prototype, a low fidelity prototype. To be honest with you, low fidelity prototypes don't really exist anymore in our day and age with the tech where it's at. So it was more of a high fidelity prototype, but that got even further enhanced by our inside designer, Sam. He's a fantastic designer. And we'll just kind of walk through this really quick. This is a glimpse of what the new project console will look like. Obviously, we're still open to making iterative changes, but this is what the top level will look like. You'll notice that we still have a lot of the same navigational elements, top level navigational elements across the top of the page, but you'll also see permits up there. We haven't decided things like will permits fall under authorities, things like that. Those are to be determined, but this is a good mid example of what you might see in PX4 in the near future. Very familiar, just like Toby was saying. It's all going to look very much as it did before, but the look and feel is going to change a bit, and the visual hierarchy of information is just going to make it easier for you to find the information that you're looking for on the project console, and then navigate to sub elements and
and customizable cards. So you're able to drag and drop and relocate which information cards are the most relevant to you to the top of the page and hide the ones that you don't want to see.
Yeah, so this is not a clickable, this is a presentation, it's not a clickable prototype. We have an example of it, but you will be able to just put your cards wherever you want, hide, show. I see some wows back there, maybe. I think they're wows.
We're squinting.
Or squinting.
We can circulate all the slides and things like that as well for those who can't see from the back. So,
and this is the first glimpse that many of you will have had of what our permitting solution might look like in PX4 in the near future. So, very similar to how we treat authorities in the sense that when you first navigate to your permitting dashboard, it's a dashboard view. It's an overview of your comprehensive permitting status in PX4, where you sit in terms of your different agencies. There's tribal nations. I know Holly and I had a conversation briefly about tribal nations and being able to track your agreements there. Lots of visuals related to your upcoming tasks related to your permits.
Talk about the color coding a little bit too.
I mean, we'll have to talk to Sam about the color coding specifically, but it looks like, yeah. I don't know. I don't want to interpret what he said up here, but I think because some of it has changed according to the prototype that I put together. But this obviously we're open to feedback on this as well. We'll share that with you once if you want to provide some feedback on it. We would love to hear from you to make sure that we're actually on the right track here. But this is what your dashboard would look like. And then when you go through multiple pages, as you start to dig down into your more specific data related to your permits, as we all know, they're like deeply complex.
So this is then an individual permit.
This is your permit portfolio view. So this is how you want to, how you can visualize and filter for them. This would be like interacting with your authorities list page, but for permit specifically. Communication hub.
Pieces do I have to meet before I start out?
How what?
I patient do I have to be before you start?
Oh, I know. I wish. It's not in production yet, but I'll reach out and I'll let you know. We can set a meeting together. I'll find exactly where Kirsten and Sam are in terms of making this into a clickable prototype. And then once it's a clickable prototype, maybe we can, you start to talk then. When we can even go over it, independently, just get feedback on kind of how it sits right now. There's no point at which we should not be having a conversation. As we all know, communications around compliance is always a sticking point. So like in PX4 for your authorities and for your portfolio broadly, do we have a communication hub specific to your permitting? And this is where you can track internal communication, but you can also track your communications with your regulatory bodies that you're having conversations with. It won't be automated. It's not going to automatically track a communication until maybe Outlook integration happens. This is your automated tracking interface. This is it's going to provide you with notifications as to when things are due or overdue, your compliance due dates, things like that. In the same way that the PX4 does this for your claim management, it will do that for permits as well. One of the things we're just trying to do broadly in PX4 is also provide more visuals, where visuals provide you with better information at a glance. We don't want to overuse them, right? Visuals are great, but you can have too many, they clutter the page. So we're just trying to surface visuals where we believe they will provide you with deeper information in the moment. Here's your effective list page for your compliance management. Preventive corrective actions. I'll read some of this for those of you in the back who might not be able to see. Compliance summary. Where are you in terms of like compliance with your portfolio? Anything that's at risk or not? Again, happy to give you a closer look. And then a document and requirement repository, same as it currently exists in PX4. And I think there's probably some work for us to do as well in terms of deciding whether or not we want to have a document repository that's separate from, for permitting, separate from authority or claim management. Maybe we put all of those together and build a more comprehensive version. There's some outstanding questions that we still have yet to answer and hear feedback on. But there is your first glimpse of the permitting solution and the new updated project console. So I hope it looks good so far. Any questions?
When is it coming was a great one.
Yeah, when is it coming? Yeah. When can I start using it? Yeah.
I'm hopeful that we're talking early 2027. Again, with the current workload and the current tools I'm about to talk about, I think our team will have enough on their plates to get through this year. So I think it'll be our first kind of project we look to release next year. Oh,
Since permits are essentially authorities, and then you're doing a review, how come you guys made the decision to build it in module and not keep it with the authorities?
Well, we haven't finalized that decision. That's why I mentioned earlier that permits might actually fall under, it might be a new module that falls under authorities. Right now we've got it separated out because it as we discussed, because Leslie, you were one of the people that I interviewed, as we discussed it is a regulatory primary approval. So it should kind of fit under authorities, but it's not exactly comfortable there. So we'll see. I mean, they're totally open to moving it there if that's where it belongs.
I just wonder, I'm far too far down this, but you did have it on the authorities page, and you were adding an authority. Could it basically be as simple as a toggling that then takes you in a different entry path, as opposed to, and then it's still all kept under authorities?
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah.
the complexity will come around where you might have a many-to-many relationship with your permits. So where you've got authorities, if I use an example, you might have a project that's got 1,000 claims in it. You want to make sure that that's a one-to-many relationship. If then you've got one permit that intersects with 50 of those claims, that's going to be a many-to-one. But if there's a many-to-many, we need to just make sure that you have the right ability to manage the many-to-many appropriately. We've seen examples with things like drilling approvals, which can live under one license, or it can be across multiple licenses. If we separate it under just a one approval, you limit yourself with the ability to go that many-to-many relationship. So there's a couple of nuances there, but again, we'll take that feedback, and if it makes more sense to just expand the authorities entity to have more granularity around permits, then we'll do that. It may be that there becomes more sub-pages within authorities, and one of them is permits. So all of your permits then live in the same spot rather than all living under the authorities and then being filtered from there. But again, your feedback will be really important to drive that outcome and that where that tool goes. But 4 other tools that I'm really excited to talk about that are all underway, and all of these are going to be delivered at the very least by the end of this year. So these are all underway and are really, really cool, both separate tools and internal tasks or capabilities within the system. I'm going to start with the Outlook integration because that's been mentioned. So we're developing a bi-directional Outlook integration, where if you're in Outlook and you're drafting an email to a landowner, for example, you'll be able to just click a little, I don't know if anyone uses any CRM systems like HubSpot or Salesforce, where you can just click on a plugin within Outlook, and that email will then be automatically associated with the stakeholder you're engaging with or that you're emailing. And then underneath that landowner, if it's a landowner, if you want to also associate the email with the land parcel or parcels, you'll be able to do that out of Outlook. So then any email you send will automatically be linked in the PX4 system. I like the ability to track the email without, what was the requirement earlier? To track the email but not link it?
Communications and permitting?
No, it was captioned in one of the requirements, but I'll come back to it. But then the other direction of the integration is then if you also want to see all of your actions as reminders in Outlook, you'll be able to turn that on as well. So again, rather than being driven by the PX4 system for reminders, that can also be driven by your Outlook, so they can be filling your calendar as well if that's something that you'd like to have. Did I see a question coming up earlier, Herb? No, cool.
No, you answered it.
Okay, great. Fantastic. So that Outlook integration is a really exciting integration that's coming. And again, it's not just limited to Outlook, but email more broadly. The other thing that I'm really, really excited about is the GUI Studio. So there's a bit of context to this one, but as many of you know, our team manage a lot of the statutory workflows within the database. And at the moment, the actions in the workflow, you can move your notification times around. And if you want more notice or less notice, or you want to add additional actions or change them within the workflow, you can. But you can't currently create your own workflow within the database. So the GUI Studio is going to be a client-facing portal for you to come into and create, manage, and update all of your own workflows that you want to include in the PX4 system as well. So the core of the system will remain those statutory workflows. But for example, if there are other internal workflows that you want to add into parts of this process, or permitting workflows that are specific to how you want to operate or obtain particular permits, you will have the ability within the studio, using this graphic user interface, which is what GUI stands for, using a really graphic tool to essentially create your own workflow as a pathway in the system. So dragging and dropping question steps and answer steps and where does the tree take you, you'll be able to customize and create all of your own workflows. So there's going to be a lot more around the studio in terms of communication come out over the next couple of months, but that is one of the major projects that's already underway with the major PX4 reimagined. So that will be live before the end of the year. And every client will have their own studio to log into and be able to manage all of your own created workflows in the database. Murray.
Yeah, like a studio. I'm assuming there's going to be like a loggable commission for that. I just can't say. So I'm going to channel arbitrarily insert things in the workflows as I'm not supposed to be.
Absolutely, yeah. There'll be a similar requirement to be an administrator of the studio to be able to access it. And again, we're still tossing up whether we continue to essentially lock down the statutory workflows and stop people from deleting statutory steps in the process. But again, maybe that'll be a question for some feedback we can grab over the next couple of months, because we want to make sure that the compliance element is not jeopardized, but we're just trying to incorporate additional flexibility in allowing you to create and update workflows around that statutory process. So that's really, really exciting. The studio will likely also become the home of a lot of your templating. So being able to template your actions, template your agreements, template emails and things like that, they'll all likely move to the studio. So that will kind of become like your customization hub of PX4. So at the moment where you've got, a lot of those managed lists where you can kind of create your own communication type and communication category that's managed in the administration portal, they will likely move to the studio, where that'll kind of become your interface in how you want to change labels in the database, list options in the database, languages, but also obviously the workflows. Is there any other questions about the studio before I move on? Cool. Tied to the studio, but interrelated, is this concept that we are currently incorporating around tasks. So to kind of just walk you through the hierarchy, you will have actions, and the actions will be driven either by workflows or by you manually creating your own actions and reminders in the database. But within those actions, we're incorporating the ability to include a task list. So we mentioned the provincial tasks, like that provincial checklist of have you done all of these things before you complete the task to make sure that you've ticked all of the boxes. So it's a bit of a take on that. So rather than it being necessarily a regulatory checklist, this can be an internal task list for how you do certain things. So as an example, in the BLM workflow, you've only really got that your maintenance fees that are due on 1 September. And the workflow is relatively simple. But to actually be able to pay those fees and continue to hold that property, there are a lot of things that you need to do internally before that happens. So the task capability will allow you to upload a template against a type of action. And I'll show you we've got a design for this as well. But you can upload a template that says, or that'll incorporate all of the tasks that you want to add into an action. All of those tasks can be assigned to different people in your team or to different teams. So again, if for things like a rent payment is a one-off action that can be due, on a quarterly basis or a monthly basis. But to actually pay the rent, you might need to raise a PO internally, email your accounts team to get the payment approved, upload the invoice to SAP. Whatever that process looks like, you can then upload a template that says this is all the tasks that we need to manage to be able to sign off on this action. So to show you that as a design, I've probably already got it open, but I'm going to start here. And again, this is Figma. So for those who haven't used it, this is our design tool that we utilize. Try and get as much of the screen as I can. It is still a little bit grainy. So if you can't see it down the back and you'd like to look at this in more detail, please just let me know. But so what we're going to incorporate is essentially a template like this, where many of you might have used some of the onboarding tools where there are a set of data fields that you're able to upload within those onboarding tools, and that updates the system. So for the task update, you can select what jurisdiction, what authority type, what action are we updating, and the action name. So again, if you update a rent payment action, it'll update all of the rent payment actions that are generated for that, for your Nevada licenses, for example. So this template will be, you don't have to upload this template every time a new action is generated or every time a new rent payment gets created. This will automatically associate with the category and type of license that you've attached it to. And then you'll have the ability to create all of these subtasks that need to be created or completed before you're able to complete the action. You can then define your offset period. So again, you might have an action that's due on the 1st of May, but 2 business days before that, we need to be emailing the management to say, hey, we've got a payment due, or a day before you've got to create the invoice, and maybe a day is not enough. But whatever those time frames are that internally you want to be completing these steps before you complete the action, you can then define that time period, who's the responsible group, and who's the responsible user. So this is almost like a little sub-workflow within your action, where those groups and those users will be notified that they've got tasks that they're responsible for, but they won't be able to complete the action without all of the steps in the process being completed. So you've got that template. That template can then be attached to your action. So again, this will be really familiar. Now it's way clearer on the computer, which is great for me. But again, this will be familiar to you, where within every action, you've got the action dashboard, which shows you all the information about that action. And at the moment, we've got a drop down for other details where it's got, all of the date ranges and things like that. So within that action, you'll then have a task section. So within that task list, you can then, should be a little add tool. Well, you can then upload that template or manually create a set of tasks, and that'll then create this little sub list of tasks that sit within that action. So these are all those little steps that need to be completed before we're able to pay the rent or lodge your annual report or whatever it might be. And so all of those tasks will be automatically issued or sent out to the relevant groups or users, depending on how you've associated those tasks. They'll all have their own deadlines. And again, once those tasks are completed, you can bulk tick off those tasks. If you want to upload evidence of those tasks being completed against the action, you can, or you can just say, yes, 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 those 3 things are done, and it'll automatically go to the next chronological task in the list.
Are people notified through the daily digest?
They'll be notified through the daily digest, but also through the notification log. Yeah. So again, you're within those individual tasks. You can add a little comment if you want, or you can just click the little checkbox and say, yes, that's been done. So it's just trying to provide a little bit more granularity and flexibility around how you actually get to completing some of these actions. Not every action will need tasks, but we just want to provide, and if you don't want to manage tasks, you certainly don't have to, but we're just trying to provide that granularity of how you as a business completing these types of actions and allowing you to incorporate a bit more granularity and a bit more automation around getting those individual steps completed before you complete your annual report or whatever it may be. So again, in terms of the logic, an action, if it has tasks within it, won't be able to be completed unless all of the subtasks are complete. So there is a little bit of, if you start to add, 10 tasks, you will have to bulk complete all those tasks before you, or complete them before you can complete the action. But once you complete all of the tasks, the system also won't necessarily say that this action is automatically completed. There will still be a validation step to say, all these tasks are done, has this action now been completed? And that completing that step will then close out the action.
Can you bulk complete tasks if you have several similar actions or something?
You certainly can. So again, from then the action list page, which will also be very familiar to many of you, we'll be adding some new column names around task. So you'll have the next task in the list will be highlighted on your action list page. But if you then click on the tasks, it'll then open a little page that allows you to go and bulk complete multiple steps within the process. But within the action list page, we're also going to be creating a tasks subpage, which will essentially operate in the same way as your actions does. Fully filterable, customizable dashboards, customizable filters, and preferences. But then within that task list, you're also then able to bulk complete from there as well.
And there's an order to the tasks. Can it wait to notify the second person in line until the first person's done what they need to do?
Yeah, that's the way it would work. Okay. So as soon as the first task is complete, the next person in the process will automatically be notified that you're now up in the process. Yeah. And again, we looked at adding this at the action level, but given your actions are often, it's your statutory or your compliance driven requirements, we didn't want to then clog your action list with another 10,000 tasks if that's the way your business operates. So by kind of filtering them out and offering the ability to manage them separately, it just allows a bit more customization in how companies manage this. So this will be really useful for the aggregates guys. So, for those specific permit types that might not necessarily have specific workflows, you'll be able to just create a template of what the tasks you want are to associate with that action. And you can update that in bulk or manually create tasks against your action lists as well. So there's some really exciting stuff coming on the incorporation of tasks in the database as well. Again, we'll probably be coming out to a lot of you for feedback on this, but we're really excited to get this released and get it out in the current system so that you'll see this in the current PX4 system likely before the end of June. So we're really keen to get this running. So if anyone's interested in using tasks internally, please let us know and we can walk you through these designs and the logic behind them in a bit more detail. Great.
I think we're going to take another trivia break. Or are you still going?
Is there any questions about any of those things that I've run through in terms of some future state tasks and tools that are coming out
When do you expect tasks to be released?
before June, or before the end of June? Sorry. And again, the GUI Studio. Oh, actually, I've still got the land use permitting system. The GUI Studio tasks and Outlook integration are all also going to be incorporated in the new system. So before the end of the year, they will all be in that new system. The other tool that I want to talk about really quickly is something that I'm going to change the terminology for this session. It's a land use approval system. So again, I don't know if this will be related to everybody in the room, but this is a new tool that we've built that is for internal approvals. So if you've got projects around the world and people operating around the world that actually want to go out on site and clear ground or put a drill hole in the ground or clear land for a drill pad or whatever that disturbance activity is on the ground, a lot of companies require an internal approval or internal certificate which gives that person on the ground the sign off to go and do that work. So this is a brand new system that we've built that with the proof of concept is live, and we are really, really excited about this. But this is a fully spatially driven solution where you can have a user in the field create a polygon or upload a polygon into this tool. And the system then conducts a spatial analysis and looks for any other GIS, any other affected or intersecting polygon within your GIS database. And it will then notify all of the appropriate teams in your business that an application's been made on that particular bit of ground. So there's a lot to this system. So I won't go into all of the detail here, but the concept is that all of these different approval processes are fully customizable by you. So you can define internally if you want to have a primary approver, a secondary approver, or multiple approvers within primary and secondary, where the permit won't, or the certificate won't be able to move through those gates without approval from all of those teams. So typically we see a primary approver of land. Do we have a mineral claim on this site? Do we have a mining lease that is actually granted that allows us to do some work? If yes, and a lot of that can also be automatically approved by the system, given if it's got a current spatial boundary that is a live license, we can automate that process. But then typically we see that approval branch out into multiple secondary approvers where we see things like environment, water, heritage or indigenous, depending on where you're operating around the world, state agreements, finance, whatever it may be, that's all customizable. And each of those teams can then see the spatial file and the requirements that's been submitted by the user and what work they want to do and what they're saying they need to do on the ground. And then each of those approval teams can approve the work, reject the work, or partially approve the request and say, look, you can't do it during this time frame, but you could do it in 3 months' time if you're happy to wait. And with all of those approval types or rejections, you can also add conditions to do that work. So if you say from a land perspective, yes, you've got the approval to go and do that work, but here are all your access conditions to get on the ground, or here are all of your approval conditions that are going to attach to that certificate. And all of those groups and all of that work then generates a certificate for the applicant, to the person who lodged the request. They then get a certificate that says, this is the work that I'm approved to do. This is where I can do it. Here is the spatial file. Here are all of the people that have approved this work, and here are all of the conditions that I need to abide by to do that work. So it is a really, really cool new system. Show of hands, just for my benefit or our benefit. Who would be interested in that solution?
Yep.
Cool. Great. And again, not everybody, which is completely fine. But we would love to show you, we've got a proof of concept we've already released, so we'd love to show those people with those hands up that solution. But that is also part of the PX4 Reimagined. So that full solution will be fully commercialized, fully ready to rock and roll before the end of the year. And it's, again, we see that integrating natively with PX4 to be able to automate a lot of that, the validation from a 10 years or land perspective, but also then to pull in a lot of those conditions from land as well to automate that process for you. So that's very, very exciting as well. But I could talk all day. I'll stop there for now, and we'll keep moving through. But if anybody wants any more information or detail about any of those updates, the AI tools we're incorporating, any of those new tools and features, or more broadly about the major migration and the PX4 reimagined, please do let us know. We'd be more than happy to talk you through all of that in more detail.